Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today we're going to be making cornbread dressing based on my family's recipe. Stay with me and I'll show you how this is made. Let's get started making our cornbread dressing. So I have gone ahead and made my cornbread. I've made one cake of cornbread, and if you haven't seen that video on how to make the cornbread, I'll put that link in that description box below so you can see how to make that. A little bit between that video and this cornbread today is there is no sugar in this. But if you have made that cornbread before and you like it, you can definitely leave the sugar in it. There's not a lot in it. It's only 2 tablespoons, but I do not put sugar in my dressing that I make for the holidays here. So I've got this on this rack. You can make this well ahead of time. If you want to freeze it, that'll be another step that you will have to make, that you can make some other things for your dinner. And I'm going to go ahead and put this aside and we'll get started on our other ingredients. Now that we've got our cornbread made, let's work on my other ingredient that I've got here that most people don't put in their dressing, but I do. I have a 6-pound hen that I have taken to the sink and I have rinsed it and I've got it in this pan here. And if there's, make sure you check to make sure there's not any of the giblets that are inside the hen. You want to get those out of there also before you get ready to stew this. So I've got a big stew pot here that I'm going to be transferring this chicken to, and I've got a bouillon cube that I'm going to break down in some water. That just kind of enhances the broth that we'll be using, that we'll have left after the chicken is done. And I've got some poultry seasoning that I'll be seasoning my chicken with. And this, once we get the chicken done, the chicken will be falling off the bone and be ready to be picked off. I only use the white meat out of the chicken in my dressing. I did not use the dark meat, but you can save that for something else. And the stock that's left behind will be great for our cornbread dressing as we use that, or we can use it to make gravy. So do not throw that away, and I'll give you some more options of what we can do with that later. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer the hen to the stock pot. We'll take it to the stove and I'll show you what it looks like when we get over there. All right, I have my hen in my stock pot now, and I've just taken that bouillon cube and taken the back of a spoon and I've just kind of broken that up a little bit. I'm gonna put some water in that to get that dissolved, and then we're gonna start putting our water over our chicken. So we'll be right back. All right, I have added 14 cups of water to this chicken, and I did not completely cover it over because I'm gonna be putting the lid on it, but it's basically almost to the top of the chicken there. What we want to do is we want to put enough in there for it to create some steam with the lid on it. And if you put too much water in it, the broth that you'll have will be diluted down. So it will cook with the lid on it. And if you want to cook some of the water off of it when the chicken gets done, you can definitely remove the lid and that will cook that off. So I have taken my bouillon cube. I've got one here, but if you want to do, 2 or 3, it's up to you. So like I say, if you like the better than bouillon, you can definitely add that to your stock. All we're doing is kind of just enhancing it a little bit more. And then I've got some poultry seasoning, and we're just going to kind of shake some of that into it. That's probably about a teaspoon. And then we're going to turn it on and let this cook. Like I say, we want this chicken, we're going to be using the white meat only out of it. And we want the chicken to be done where it's falling off the bone. And then we'll just pick the white meat off of it once the chicken has cooled down. So again, this can be made in advance also, just like you made your cornbread. If you want to make your chicken ahead of time, you can pull it off the bone, and then you can actually freeze it. If you want to make it ahead of time, you've got it there, then you can defrost it and have it ready to go for your dressing once you're getting ready to put that together. So I'm going to go ahead and cook this chicken. I'm going to put the lid on it, and I will see you back when it is done. All right, my chicken has come up to a boil and I have turned it down to low, and I'm just going to keep the lid on it. And you just want to keep the lid on it where it is vented a little bit on the side. Let me scoot this camera down. I hope I don't make anybody dizzy doing that. So you can see here that the lid is just vented on the side, and that just kind of helps it along a little bit. So put it down on low and we'll cook it all the way through, and then when I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, we are one step closer to making our dressing. I just pulled a chicken out, and I wanted you to show that how this just falls apart off the bone and how it's just coming apart in pieces here. So you can tell when it's ready, when you're looking at it, it'll start falling to pieces. So this is where we're at. And again, remember, we're going to be using the white meat only in our dressing. We're not going to be using the dark, and we'll save that for something else. All right, I'm going to let this cool down so I can pull this off the bone, and we'll come back and I'll have everything else ready to go, and we'll start assembling our dressing for today. Stay with me. All right, now that I have removed my chicken, you are left with chicken stock. I did give it a taste to see if it needed anything else, and I did add some poultry seasoning to it. And I'm going to let this cook down just a little bit to kind of thicken up some, and then you're left with your chicken stock. So at this point, once it's done, you will take a strainer and strain out any of the pieces that might be left over from where you stewed your chicken, and you're left with clean chicken stock. So at that point, if you need it today, you can use it, but if not, you've got it for future use. You can freeze it, and then when you need it, you've got it to thaw it out and use it. So don't throw away this because you will have some fantastic chicken stock to use for your next meals. All right, we are back now, and I've got the rest of my vegetables cut up for our dressing here. So I did take a half of an onion. This is about a medium-sized onion. I took half of that, and I've already chopped that up. And then I took 1.5 stalks of celery, and I did chop that up. We want all these to be about the same pieces. These are little bite-sized pieces that we'll be putting into our dressing. And then another one of my secret ingredients is I've got here is water chestnuts. And I've taken those and I've kind of chopped those up into little bite-sized pieces as well. So that was one of the little cans of water chestnuts, and they're chopped up as well. So I've got some eggs here that I boiled. So this is 4 eggs. I've got 4 more here in case I need some more. So this is all your recipe. If you like more eggs or less of those, if you don't like them at all, you can definitely leave those out. Any of these things here, this is your recipe, how you want to make it. These are the things that I like in mine. And so I've got some more eggs there just in case I start mixing up. I need some more. I can always go grab some more onion and celery if I don't have enough as I'm mixing it. Then I've got my white meat here from the chicken that I roasted earlier, and I've got that picked apart, and I've got that in a bowl. And then last but not least, I've got my cornbread that I made earlier, and it has been sitting here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the stove, and I'm going to take my onions and my celery, and I'm going to put a little bit of butter in the pan, and I'm going to make those where they're just soft. I don't want them translucent. I just want to kind of wake up some of that flavor in the onions and the celery. So we'll start with our onions and our celery, and I'll show you what's happening. All right, stay with me. Okay, let's get started with our onions now, and I'm going to be adding, it'll be a half a stick of butter with the onions that I'll be using here in my carbon steel pan. So I'm going to let that heat up just a little bit. I love the taste of what the butter does to the dressing. I do not like a dry dressing, and the butter will add just a little bit more flavor to it to enhance it. So I'm going to let the carbon steel skillet heat up here. Then I'm going to put half a stick of butter in, and I'll put my onions in, and we're just going to waken those up just a little bit just to kind of enhance that flavor of those onions. We don't want them translucent because we're going to be cooking the dressing a little bit more. So we just want to kind of add just a little bit more flavor to it and just kind of take that raw onion edge off of it. So this does that with these little bit of butter that we've got here. We want to watch the temperature of our butter also. We don't want it to start turning brown because it will get you could burn it if you let it set up too high too long. So I have just now turned the flame down. We do want a little bit of that nutty taste out of it incorporated into those onions. So let's go ahead and put our onions in now. And we're just going to kind of give this a mix through with this butter. We just want to kind of wake up the onions a little bit, get some of that flavor out, and that'll infuse some of that onion flavor into that butter also, and that'll incorporate well into our dressing that we'll be making today. So just a few seconds on these, maybe a minute, and then we will take them out, and we're going to do the same thing with our celery. Already I wish you could smell how that has just really, the aromatics of those onions have really taken over. And it's going to really be nice in our butter, how that will infuse into that. Make our dressing even that much better. All right, I'm going to take these up now. Let me turn my burner off. I'm going to take the onions up, and I'm going to put them back in my bowl, and then I'll bring my celery over. All right, we've got our onions done now, so let's go ahead and put our other half of our stick of butter into the pan and let that melt down. And then I've got my celery here that will do the same thing too. Like I said, we don't want to cook these. We just kind of wake them up a little bit and infuse a little bit of that butter into them. So I'm going to turn the skillet down now that it's gotten hot. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add my celery in now. Make sure we get all of that added into our pan. And once we get back and start putting our dressing together, we'll actually be putting the butter in there with it. So we're going to take every bit of that with us into the dressing. I think this is an important step to it. It kind of enhances the dressing a little bit and wakes these flavors up in these aromatics that we've got here. All right, that looks good. I'm going to take these up and I'll meet you back and we'll get ready to start putting our dressing together. All right, let's put our dressing together. So we're going to take our cornbread and we're going to break it apart and we're going to put it in this pan. So you just want to kind of crumble it up. Now that I've got my cornbread crumbled up in this bowl, I'm going to go ahead and add some of my chicken in here. And this is to taste. You can put as much in here as you want. We'll see at the end how much this is going to make, and that way you can either make more or less for your family. I'm making a small batch today, but how many we'll see what it looks like when it gets finished, because Even though I say it's a small batch, they usually grow and grow and grow. All right, so I'm going to put about half of this chicken in here, and we'll see what that looks like at the end. All right, now I'm going to put some eggs in here. I'm going to put about half of those in here as well. Actually, I'm going to add all of them. And I've got 4 more eggs if I need them standing by. And what I don't use of those, I'll make deviled eggs. All right, now I'm just going to take a spoon and I'm just going to kind of mix that together. All right, that looks good just as an initial mix through. We'll continue to mix as we put the other ingredients in it. All right, now let's grab our other bowl here and we're going to add our wet ingredients that I'm going to call them. This is our celery with the butter in it. You can still see it's got the butter in it. We're going to add all of that goodness into that bowl. And here's our onions. We're going to add that in as well. And lastly, we have our water chestnuts that we've got here. We're going to add those in also. And I'm going to give this a little mix through. All right, now that we've got this a little mix through here, I'm going to add a 1 can of cream of chicken soup, and this is the 10.5 ounce can. So I'm going to add that into the mixture, and then I'm going to mix this through. All right, now I'm going to take my chicken stock that I made earlier, and I'm going to give that just a mix through just to make sure that all of that stays combined together. And I'm going to put just a little bit of this. This is 2 cups of this, and I've got probably another 3 or 4 cups on the stove because I do not like a dry dressing. So we're going to put about half of it in here to start out with. I know we'll probably use all of this, but we're just eyeballing this to see where we're going to be at with it. And we're going to give that a little mix through. All right, now that we've got that combined together, I'm going to take my sage. I love sage dressing. And this is seasoned to taste. We're going to put just enough in here and we're going to try it. Everything in here is cooked. So when we get it all mixed together, we're just going to give it a try and see if we need to do any more of the sage. I like to put the sage in here because it is dry on top of my wet ingredients. That way it gets mixed in together. And that way when you get it in here, you don't have dry clumps of sage. This would kind of get incorporated into the wet mixture. So I'm going to start out with about a tablespoon, and we're going to mix this through. I'm going to take my spatula and continue to mix that up. And with any of your seasonings, you can start out with a little bit and you can always add, but if you put too much in it, you can't take it out. All right, now that we've got the wet ingredients mixed together, I'm going to go ahead and put that into my dry ingredients, and we're going to give that a good mix through. We want a nice moist dressing because we're going to be putting this into a dish and we're going to put it into the oven and bake it. We definitely want it on the moist side because you can cook the moisture out of it if you need to, if you get too much in it. But like I say right now, this is way too dry by looking at it. But we are going to give it a mix through to incorporate it in there so that we get all of that cornbread, a little bit of the wet mixture mixed in with it. All right, I can tell by looking at this that I am going to put some more chicken in it because you can have this as a dish on its own with the chicken that you can put in it. So like I said earlier, you can put as much in as you or as little as you want. I think I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this in there and we'll give that a mix through to see where we're at. All right, I can tell here that I need to take some of this out. So I'm going to break this into 2 batches because I've got everything incorporated into it now, and I'm going to break it into 2 batches and we'll work it that way. That way I can get everything mixed in together. All right, now that I've got it separated, I've got 2 batches here. I can work on one and then do the other one. That makes it just a little bit easier. I can already tell by looking at it that I'm going to have some more of my chicken stock in here. And I'm going to go ahead and add some of the sage directly into my chicken stock. That way I've got it that I can measure it in. I'll put another tablespoon in that and give that a good mix through. And now that I've got that mixed through, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more of this in there. Let's add another half of it and see where we're at. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this in there. I can tell by looking at it that I need it. Now it is starting to look more like dressing, but it's going to need just a little bit more of my chicken stock. And I'm going to give it a taster in just a minute to see where I'm at with my seasonings. That's looking really good. It's coming together nicely. We're going to need some more chicken stock. I've got some more of my chicken stock there. I got another 2 cups of it. And now I want to give this a taste. I want to see where I'm at with my seasonings to see if I need to add any salt or pepper or if I need any more sage. This is where you want to test it now. So I'm going to take a clean spoon and let's just give this a taste and see what we need to do. That is coming along. It does need a little bit more sage and it needs a little bit more salt and pepper in it. So I'm going to put a little bit more stock in it and we'll put a little bit more sage and some salt and pepper in it to taste. Now that I've got my salt and pepper in, let's put a little bit more sage. I love the taste of the sage and the dressing. So I'm going to go ahead and put about that's probably another teaspoon in it, and we'll take a taste of it in just a minute. I'm going to add a little bit more of this broth, chicken stock that we've got here. And if I get too much in it, I've got more over here that I can add to it if it gets too wet. So definitely, we're going to be working with 2 batches here. All right, let's give this a good mix through, and I'm just going to continue to mix and taste. And you do the same when you make your dressing, because you know what your family likes and you know what you like. So it's your option at this point, how much you want to put in of the ingredients. And just with that little bit more of that chicken stock in there, this has really stirred down, so I can actually probably put a little bit more of that other in here. But this is getting to where it is, where you want it to be. I'm going to check it again for seasoning here in just a second, and then we're going to get our pan ready to go into the oven. All right, I am back, and I've got mine seasoned to the way I like, and you can see here what it looks like, the consistency that we've got. And like I said, I've got another dish over here that I've got as well. So I've got 2 dishes here. I'm just going to make a little bit tonight because I wanted to show y'all how to make this. This is the 9x13, and this is the next size down. I measured it. It looks like it's a 10x7. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up. And I did take a spray. You can use your butter if you want to. It's got a lot of butter and things in it already, and it should come right out of it, but I did spray it with some non-stick spray, and I'm just going to put this in here. This is already done. Everything in here is already cooked. As you saw, everything is done. So definitely give this a taste as you're mixing it together to see where you're at with your seasonings. If you need to add some more eggs, if you need to add more chicken in it, this is completely up to you. So I'm going to fill this baking dish full. And I've got my oven preheated to 375. And what I'm looking for is I'm going to put this in here for about 25-30 minutes. And I want a brown crust to form on it. You'll be able to tell when it starts getting the little brown crust on the top and the sides. I love the crunchy sides on it when it bakes up. So, all right, what you don't use tonight, you can definitely freeze. This is something that you can make well ahead of time. If you wanted to, make this ahead of time and go ahead and freeze this. And when you get ready to bake it, just take it out of the freezer, let it thaw, put it in the oven to warm up. Again, this is already cooked, and all you're doing at this point is putting your crust on it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven, and I'll be back to show you what this looks like when this is done. And I'm going to go ahead and finish this rest of this up, and I'm going to go ahead and get this ready for the freezer. I might use this in the next week or 2. I might even save it for Christmas. All right, we have the dressing out of the oven. Let me get me a big scoop of this out of here, and let's give this a test. You know, I had forgot about putting that water chestnuts and that celery in there, and that little crunch it just added to it. It's delicious. That hint of sage. Oh my goodness. I wish you were here with me to share, because I would definitely share this with you. So I hope you get inspired to make your own cornbread dressing. And if you like this content, maybe you might find one of these over here that you might find something else you might like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you on how your cornbread dressing turned out. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye now.